Hello out there, folks. Welcome. This is the Total Film Critic podcast, and my name is Thad. My co-hosts are Audi, who is a former journalist and the owner of Modern Retro Radio, and Kat, who is a choreographer and a film archivist. And today we are going to be talking about two films, Seconds from 1966, starring Rock Hudson and the King of Comedy, from 1983, starring Jerry Lewis and Robert De Niro. And welcome to my co-hosts.
Hello there.
We are glad to be here, Thad. You know, we're the little mod squad of the internet. I love it. Looking forward to the discussion. Who was the one that pitched the movie Seconds? Who was the one that suggested that one?
That is me, Audi and Thad. Well, when I first saw this film, I was blown away, and it left a lasting impression on me. For thrillers, it really holds up today in terms of cinematography and acting, just in all categories of movies.
Yeah.
The concept later inspired the film Selfless, with Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley. So that one was great too, but it doesn't hold a candle to this Seconds movie, in my opinion.
Yep, 1966 film. My first time ever hearing of it. I didn't know that Rock Hudson was making movies like this in the mid. When I think of Rock Hudson in the mid 60s, I just think of his sex comedies. You know, I didn't realize that he would make a psychological thriller like this. This film was directed by John Frankenheimer. Is that how you pronounce his name?
John Frankenheimer.
Okay, and this is my first time seeing it, and so it looks like this movie did have a profound effect on you, Kat, so I want you to expound on it first, but just to lay the groundwork for the listeners, this film was a mindfuck, okay? So let's just, it's a black and white suspenseful film made in 1966, and the premise is so bizarre, but who knows? It could basically happen, and the movie starts with an older man who apparently committed a rape, who buys his way out by assuming a whole new identity, and so I'll just let Kat take over from there.
So the beginning is very suspenseful. It's like, what's going to happen here? The camera maneuvers catch you off guard, first of all, which is that opening scene. But first it starts with John Randolph, who is playing the Arthur Hamilton character. He's a middle-aged man who is feeling lost in his life. He's feeling unsuccessful in his personal relationships, even though he has had a successful business. He mentions that he's on the pathway to becoming the president of the bank at some point. So he's having issues with his family, which leads him to be interested in the phone call that he gets from his friend, who on the phone is played by Murray Hamilton.
Now, that would be the mysterious voice that we're hearing on the phone calls?
Yes. Tells him about this company. It's simply known as the company. And he's telling him, this is a wonderful situation. You can have a new life, a new beginning. Come join us. And his friend was supposed to be dead, or so he thought. But turns out he's been alive this whole time and his life has been transformed by this company, basically. Anyway, his relationship with his wife is very cold and not affectionate, and he hardly sees his daughter anymore. And it's, he just doesn't have a family life, really.
Now, see, I'm confused. Because I thought his motivation for going along with it was that he had committed that unspeakable act.
Yes.
See, when he shows up at this company, which he accesses through this meatpacking plant, so definitely that meatpacking plant was definitely a front for where this very sinister, high-priced, life-changing deals occur, and he's offered a cup of tea by a receptionist or whatever, and so when he drinks his tea, it has an immediate effect on him, and he has what I perceived to be. First, I didn't know if it was happening in the moment or if these were flashbacks. But what we would later learn that when he drinks that tea, he's having flashbacks, and it's him sexually assaulting a woman. And we know that it happened because they get him to agree to go forward with this, assuming a new identity, because they show him a film of him committing the act. So I thought that was his motivation for going along with it. And then he rationalizes it. Well, yeah, my marriage isn't much, and my daughter lives, in another state with her husband. So he just says, all right, let's do it. Am I totally off track here?
Oh, yeah, it was that, but he was thinking it over before he was sure about moving forward with this, and he was on the fence about it. They basically used that video footage as motivation. And I think they had that there for all their clients in case they didn't want to join, and they used it as blackmail, and that's what happened in his case. And that's why that came into play, because he was on the fence.
Okay, I see. So the reason he was there was not because he had committed that act. They used the tea to alter his personality, and that's when the act occurred?
Yes.
Wow. So it was a setup.
I was confused at that part of the film too, and then because it wasn't clear to me, and so I was like, well, it probably will become clear later. So after they showed him the film, I assumed that they drugged him, and then they used that tape as a blackmail. So I finally connected the pieces with that.
So something in that tea made him commit this sexual assault that they filmed. And so now the funny part about that is that they made him sign an agreement. And I just thought that was so bizarre that they had to get his signature. I mean, what are they going to do? Take him to court, to small claims court if he doesn't go through with it? I just thought that was weird. But to get into the directing style, I noticed that John Frankenheimer is really good about fast cuts. I love fast cuts. He zoomed in on like the most innocuous gesture, making even something as matter of putting that piece of paper with that address in his pocket, a suspenseful moment. But when he signs that contract, that's when they jump to another shot of the scaffold making the first incision to give him plastic surgery. I just thought that was smart directing there.
Actually, I looked up some of the trivia for the film, and the director actually, he used real shots of an actual rhinoplasty operation, and the cameraman actually fainted, and so he directed he had to take over and do some of those scenes, but I guess they were actual procedures.
It sure did look mighty convincing. It looked very convincing. So what was the actual procedure?
It was called a rhino, I don't want to mispronounce it, rhinoplasty operation.
And what is that?
I did not look that up.
I mean, is it a facial thing or is it okay?
But it must have been nauseating.
A rhinoplasty, that's a nose surgery, mostly used with facelifts or when noses get injured in an accident or damaged in an accident. So that's what that is.
I see. Gotcha. So after the procedure, and it's a totally organized, quote unquote, company. So he awakens from the surgery, bandaged up, and there's someone there to counsel him psychologically just to prepare him. Hey, your life is about to change. You have all these degrees. You have a new birth certificate. You're the only son of deceased parents. And so over the course of a week, they get him psychologically and physically back in shape. And next you know, he's Rock Hudson. And so then...
Well...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think it was more months. They kind of snuck that in there, but that was months of rehabilitation for him.
Yeah. So... what was interesting, and so and apparently during those months they were getting in his head and wanting to know, okay, what do you want to be? This is your opportunity to be who you want to be. So they arranged for him to be what was it? He was an artist or something like that, and that's what he wanted to do. He was a painter or whatever.
I think it was his they asked him what his dream job would be And so I saw it as like they kind of probably hypnotized him, and then they got into his mind, and he was like, oh well, I really want to be a painter or whatever. So they arranged that identity for him because it was like a something deep psychologically that he'd thought about, I guess.
So that's so interesting that they would blackmail him into this, but yet they completely gave him a new life. And so, Kat, what struck you about that character once he is Rock Hudson? And then it sounded like the character had a problem with alcohol when he was Rock Hudson or when he was the original version of himself. And so his ugly demons came out, it seemed like.
Yeah, but also he was a cold person, and his affections toward his family, which also caused a lot of the problems between him and his wife.
Right.
And he just didn't share much of his life with her.
Yeah, and I noticed that the character who apparently they had been married for years, but they had separate beds. Of course, this is also the 60s, but yeah, she got into his bed early in the film to comfort him and kiss him, and he just wasn't reciprocating that. I did notice that.
But with that shot there, like I found that interesting because normally in those mid 60s movies, you don't really see a lot of those shots of couples in the same bed or comforting each other. I haven't seen a lot in many of the films that I've seen, so I thought that was
the film certainly compensates for that with that later winemaking scene. I was not prepared for the full frontal nudity.
So this was the first time of me watching it, because I had skipped over it all the other times I have seen this movie, is because it gets a little bizarre. So this was the first time of me seeing it fully.
Well, yeah, now, so yeah, okay, yeah, we don't want to jump ahead exactly how we got to that scene, but the film is definitely not afraid to go there.
But yeah, going back into Rock Hudson's transformation into his new life, he gets a new name, Antiochus Wilson. He goes by Tony. He had to take a whole different name.
Yeah. So he's now Tony Wilson. Can you explain the part that when he's at the airport, so they fly him to his new part of the country where he lives, and he gets his baggage, and then that Irish-looking character runs up to him and who apparently knew him. What was the point to that? I missed it.
So basically, the company hired people
gotcha.
to interact with them or recognize them so that they looked like a legitimate person and that they had been there the whole time instead of, like a new person.
I see.
So that's what that was.
And he's living in a home on the beach, has this great life, and then while walking on the beach, he meets this woman who's a mysterious woman, and then we later learn that she was hired to be in his life.
Actually, that part of the movie, it kind of shook me because I wasn't really expecting that. Like,
I knew it instantly.
Especially at the party when everybody, everybody is kind of with the company. That kind of threw me for a loop. And that whole drunk scene, I actually was looking into some of the facts on the film, and apparently Rock Hudson really got drunk for that scene. And I went back and saw it again, and I was like, wow, he did really good because he really smashed.
He seemed very sauced, so that's what they call method acting. So he was, why not? He went all in with his character, Rock Hudson, without a doubt.
Especially at the end there.
Oh God, yes. And the movie ended as I expected it. When you make a deal with the devil is going to win in the end. But nonetheless, the character Rock Hudson doesn't really fully embrace himself until that scene with the gypsies or whatever they are, when the outdoor Renaissance winemaking thing, and then everyone is drunk and everyone gets naked and they all get in the barrel and they squash the grapes. And he he's refusing, to participate in this, but he's forced into it, and they take his clothes off and he gets into it, and then he succumbs to it. He just surrenders to it. And so that's his psychological breakthrough. At least you think, okay, he's fully accepted that this is his life now. But then we cut to, then he becomes a socialite, and he's at these house parties, and it just seemed like he was staying sauced and making an ass of himself.
Going back to that wine festival scene, it looks like nothing was actually...
And by the way, speaking of that wine festival scene, there were plenty of boobs, plenty of female tushes, and only one male tush. I'm just saying, I was counting. That wasn't fair.
Well, you must have seen something I didn't see, because I looked and I didn't see anything. It all kind of looked blurred out.
No, it was clear, crystal clear. I watched the link that Thad sent me. It was, especially the first woman who gets in that barrel, you see it all.
I will say that there is a version, because I believe the one you saw was probably the Criterion release. There's another version, I think, with additional, it might be a different cut of the movie, but I did hear that there is a cut of the movie with a few extra minutes that they reinserted, or I think the wine scene is longer in that version.
Really? This was a pretty long scene. I was like actually waiting for it to be over. I think I saw the full one, because it just went on and on and on,
So I must have seen the US release then, because that was the first time I had stayed through the whole scene, and you must have seen the extra version, Audi.
Yeah, I did. I was a 1966 movie. Come on,
yeah, I think I saw the Criterion version, which the scene went on for a long time, much longer than I thought it was going to be, and so that caught me off guard. But the actual duration of the scene caught me off guard too, because this was 66, and those type of films didn't come out until I think about 67 or 68. The films were really pushing those boundaries on what they could get away with.
Well, I think the purpose for that scene going such a long time is because the Rock Hudson character has his psychological breakthrough where he surrenders. I think that was the point to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And he has some sort of, he's released, his spirit feels a release finally, because he was kind of stuffy. This goes back to the rape scene, which actually they said that he didn't actually rape her, but it looked like he did, and they could, get him just alone on that.
Well, no, it looked like the original version of Rock Hudson's character did assault her, because he was physically on that woman. They were both clothed, but...
Yeah, John Randolph does an excellent job in that role of the very stuffy businessman.
Very troubled.
And that whole sequence is really trippy. It seems like a dream, because they meant it to seem like he was dreaming, but it turns out he was just drugged.
Yeah. And
he did that all in person.
Yeah, John Frankenheimer conveys a lot of that psychological inner turmoil with a lot of camera tricks, a lot of zooms, a lot of manipulating of the film. And the film is also shot in black and white, which I think was particularly effective. Because a lot of movies, and it was a Paramount film, and so for a Paramount film to be in black and white, I think it was a conscious choice to make it black and white, just to convey that suspense. So let's talk about, what's that?
Oh, I was going to say the director of photography was James Wong Howe, and it was actually nominated for an Academy Award for his work on the black and white cinematography on the film.
Okay. I wanted to get to now let's talk about where he's accepted his new life, but subconsciously he must not, because he now seems to regret his decision. So walk us through that, Kat.
So, as you said before, he had been drinking a lot, and he seems to be in love with the person who has been sent by the company, but he doesn't find that out until this one scene where everybody is staring at him.
Yeah.
all these men are staring at him is very, like, eerie, kind of.
You talking about when he passes out, when he has this drunken...
The camera is going back and forth between their faces.
Yeah.
And you see it from Rock Hudson, Tony Wilson's point of view. The cinematography is just going back and forth between their faces. And you see it from Rock Hudson, Tony Wilson's point of view. And he's absolutely smashed. And they literally drag him away from the party. They carry him away. And even his butler is in on he's been sent by the company, basically. And he tells them, like, Tony Wilson asks, what's wrong with them? And the butler says, they know. Rock Hudson's Tony Wilson says, they know what? He's like, they're just like you. They're reborns.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So,
which was what Tony Wilson, Rock Hudson's character, is. So he freaks out and then lets out this huge scream. It's really a powerful scream, and that's when Nora Marcus is the character. Salome Jens is the girl who plays Nora Marcus, who has been sent by the company to be his love interest. And she tells him, basically, shut up.
Yeah. Who
do you think you are? She totally turns on him, and he's freaking out. He's like...
And let me just stop right there. The part where she gets him to agree to slow down drinking when he's making an ass of himself, and then she says, I think I love you. Do you think that was her character was sincere there? It sounded like she really was falling for him.
I think so. She did, but she definitely was disappointed at him drinking.
Yeah.
That whole scene there, I was, because I was kind of curious. I was like, is she really falling for him? Because she's trying to tell him not to drink. And then he just, he says, I'm not going to. And then he gets out of control. And then almost at the end there, when she comes in and is like, what are you doing? It's like she's almost disappointed, like he's kind of failed her in a way, or he's kind of failed at this new identity that they've been given. That's kind of what I got from it.
And then I found myself wondering, well, how come this character is the one character that just completely freaks out and realizes this huge decision that he made when all these other people at the party are completely fine with it. But let's just cut to the chase here. He returns to the company and he says he wants a do-over. And so he goes through the same ritual of going to the company again, believing that they're going to work with him to basically start over again with another identity. But didn't he go back to visit his wife as Rock Hudson, his original wife, or what was that scene I'm trying to think of?
So basically, he goes back to his wife, played by Frances Reed. Emily Hamilton is the character's name. And he pretends to be a friend of her husband, which surprises her because he didn't have many friends, and she hadn't heard about him, but then again, they never really discussed anything, so she's not puzzled by it that much. So he asked her about painting supplies that Arthur, her husband, which was originally him, of course, had, and she had gotten rid of all of his stuff, basically. So she had, cleaned out the garage with all of his painting utensils and just, cleaned out his life, basically. The only thing that she kept was the trophy, and she gives that to him.
Now, why would a loving wife do that?
Well, there wasn't much love between them, and going quickly back, we forgot about Will Geer, who plays he's simply titled the Old Man. That's his character name. He turns out that he is the one who started this company.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of creepy. Of course, Will Geer would later play Grandpa on the Waltons, but he's kind of creepy without his mustache.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but so the old man he tells John Randolph, Arthur Hamilton, that you have nothing to go back to. Your wife doesn't love you, and and John Randolph's character, Arthur, realizes he's right. I don't have anything going on in my family or my relationship with my wife. So he's right. So that's why he eventually just was like, okay, do whatever with me, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so even if he had not agreed and signed, they would have shown him that film anyway, sounds like. Yeah.
Yes. And he leaves his wife's house. The company is there to pick him up. His butler, who also works for the company, takes him there. They had also been watching him. Other reborns who worked for the company had also been watching him in case he tried to escape. So they take him back to the company, and Rock Hudson's character Tony says, we've got to redo this. I want to go back to the company and not this new life I've made for myself and just start over again. Because this wasn't what I really wanted.
Right. Yeah. And we know that they are appearing to agree with him, agreeing to accommodate him. But as they are, they're like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and set him up with the surgery. And he said, wow, that fast. And of course, they put him on a gurney, but it's not for reconstructive surgery. It is to take him out. And so they're wheeling him out, reading his last rites with the priest. And they gag him, and Rock Hudson demonstrates beautifully the psychological torment of knowing he is about to be killed. But one thing that was said to him that was very interesting, they said that people who are in this system sooner or later all will have to die too. But yet he seemed to be the only character. I guess he was the only character that we see who seem to struggle with this, and I guess all the other people in the company are the ones who are fine with it. Actually,
his friend, though, it's never really explained what happens to Murray Hamilton's character Charlie, but I would assume he came back too, and that he had to recommend somebody, so he recommended his friend there, and that's how John Randolph's character Arthur Hamilton gets involved, because Murray Hamilton's character had to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he also had rejected his new life. But it's never explained, did he get to go out back into normal life, or was he killed also?
Okay. Well,
yeah, that really wasn't explained a lot, and I kind of wish there was like a little bit more explanation on that character.
Well, it was based on a novel. I bet if you read the novel that this film was based on, it's probably explained in the novel. When you make a movie based on a book, a lot of key details are going to get lost, especially with film editing. It's probably explained in the novel.
Most likely.
Yep.
On the film too. It's interesting to note that when this was released, it was kind of a downer for people, and it was not received very well. I think I read it opened at Cannes in 1966, and
Cannes.
Excuse me. And the European critics were so hostile about this film that the director sent Rock Hudson instead to the press conference, and they just lashed out at him apparently because the
Europeans didn't like this.
Yeah,
you're kidding.
The European critics and the press were very hostile, it says, about the film, which was confusing because usually when a film does poorly in America, they rave about it and love it. But in this case, I guess it was exactly the opposite.
Very interesting.
Wow. John Frankenheimer lost the film, or didn't have the film in his collection, and years later, at some guy who was a fan of classic film had a bunch of reels and VHS tapes in his collection, and he would sell them to people. He had a little shop, and John Frankenheimer came in and was wondering if he had seconds, which was surprising, and he didn't have it all those years. And he came looking for it, and this guy happened to have the movie, and he was really thankful. And I think that's part of the reason why they didn't have the complete version at first. And then they re-released it with an extra 7 minutes in 96.
Yeah, I didn't hear that, but I did hear that there was a few scenes that were missing that Frankenheimer tried to find, and one of them was a scene where he shot where the Tony Wilson character, Rock Hudson character, goes back and sees his daughter, and the husband of the daughter was played by Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock on the original Star Trek. I thought that was kind of a cool tidbit, but apparently that footage was lost, and he tried to find it and was unsuccessful to find it.
Yeah, that's really sad. Let's talk about that opening sequence, which it's eerie. It's a great sequence by Sal Bass, and it's very similar to Vertigo, which is another one of my favorites, and also has just...
Yeah, there's definitely some Hitchcock-isms in this movie, definitely.
Yeah, it focuses on the eyes in both the Vertigo and Seconds openings.
Oh, I wanted to ask, in that opening sequence, when he's walking through the train station, through the crowd, I love the camera angles. It almost like one camera operator was using a handheld, because first the shot is about shoulder length, and then it's almost like floor length, all in the same frame. And then at one point, it almost looked like they had like a camera attached to the actor somehow, but you couldn't see it because it looked like it was right over his right shoulder, and it seemed like they were experimenting with a new way to attach a camera to follow an actor. Did you guys notice that?
Well, yeah, actually, I looked up some stuff about the film, and I think that was in Grand Central Station, but it said that they had to shoot in Grand Central Station, and there was so much, so many people, and they didn't want to ruin the take, so the Frankenheimer, he hired a male model and a Playboy bunny to make out on like the stairs at the station, and then they put the camera in a suitcase, and that allowed them to be able to shoot, and people were distracted by the male model kissing the Playboy bunny, and they could shoot the scene without interruptions.
Okay, is there footage of that?
I have no idea, but I was like, what? I was kind of shocked by that tidbit. I was like, wow, went all to that trouble so that they could film the scene in that station uninterrupted.
Yeah.
There's also Kai D, who also had a role in The Manchurian Candidate, also directed by John Frankenheimer. In The Manchurian Candidate, he is the Asian gentleman who is brainwashing the soldiers. And in this one, he plays also kind of a creepy but jolly character. And he's also like, I guess he's a psychiatrist, possibly. It's not really explained, but he's the one who hypnotizes Antiochus, Tony Wilson, or / Arthur Hamilton's character. So he's the one who finds out that he had wanted to be a painter, but that's not really completely what he wanted.
All right. Well, the film is a 1966 film, Seconds. So check it out if you don't mind having your brain twisted a little bit. But yeah, it definitely not one you want to watch with the kids, for sure. And so just only in the interest of time, we need to move on to the King of Comedy. Totally different film, but suspenseful in its own way, only because we're seeing a comic legend perform in a way that he was never seen performing on film before.
Yeah, and this was your recommendation, Audi, so you should, do you remember the first time you actually saw King of Comedy and what the impression was that you got first on it?
I saw it I saw it the year after it came out when it was on cable, and I was 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, and that was really the beginning of me truly getting into Jerry Lewis. I knew who Jerry Lewis was from age 5 through 10, and I'd seen some of the movies, but when Hardly Working came out, that was the beginning of me saying, okay, I need to start keeping up with him. So every article I could find, and so there's Hardly Working. I started watching the telethons, but The King of Comedy really was the first Jerry Lewis movie that came out when I really started following him. I was taken aback when I saw that it was a dark comedy. I was bright enough to know that there was a such thing as dark comedies because I'd seen some. I knew that there were, your big, Bob Hope type comedies, and I knew that there were your Neil Simon type comedies because I was really into Neil Simon and I loved witty writing. So I knew that there were different types of comedy, and so I remember reading the articles in People magazine that Jerry Lewis had been cast as this Johnny Carson type. But it's really a movie that you have to see several times to just absorb just how fantastic it is. From the casting, was one thing I still don't know for sure. Was Jerry Lewis the first one they wanted to play that role of Jerry Langford as the talk show host?
No, actually. So it was originally because Freddie DeCordova is in the film as the director. That was Johnny Carson's
real life
on the Tonight Show. So actually, Johnny Carson was offered that role first. He turned it down, and then it was shopped around. Actually, I looked it up. Most of the Rat Pack was considered. Frank Sinatra was considered. Dean Martin was considered. Joey Bishop, but they weren't offered it. Carson was actually offered it, and then it finally went to Jerry Lewis.
Wow.
Also, actually, I did read that Robert De Niro, when he initially heard that Jerry Lewis got the part, he went to Scorsese and he's like, "Well, I feel like this is gonna bad casting." And Scorsese was like, "No, Lewis, he's a good dramatic. He can be a good dramatic actor. Just cut me some slack and just work with me." And I, Lewis proved that he could do the serious acting.
Well, Jerry Lewis also said that it wasn't much of an acting job. He said he just played himself, which was true.
Yeah.
It was Jerry Lewis playing Jerry Lewis. So, for those who don't know, it's a 1982 Martin Scorsese directed film that stars Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis. Robert De Niro is an aspiring stand-up comic who doesn't really respect boundaries. He's a little bit of a misfit, but he actually does have solid comedy material, and he also spent his whole life admiring this character, Jerry Langford, who was a Johnny Carson type talk show host. And he wanted a big break to get on Jerry's show so he could do a set. So he was an autograph hound. He was one of the people who always was outside when Jerry would leave the studio after taping the show. And he manages to work his way into Jerry's limo one particular night when it's so insane when Jerry's leaving the show. So Robert De Niro, gets a cut from intervening a fan from hurting Jerry, and so that's how he gets into Jerry's limo. And so that begins really the connection between them two. So Jerry lets Robert De Niro ride, and he lets him go to Jerry's penthouse. And Robert De Niro makes a pitch saying, "I'm a stand-up comic." And Jerry, he is not interested at all in this guy, but he is just being nice. And so told Robert, call my studio or call the office and we'll work out an agreement, which is a total lie. There are just numerous scenes of Robert De Niro going to Jerry Lewis's office trying to get a meeting. And so he drives that poor woman who plays the receptionist, who I love. I don't know her real name, but the woman who plays the receptionist where the Jerry Langford show is shot. I just love her. All the characters are so well done. They're all understated and they all do their job. So I don't want to just basically recite the entire script, but another key character in the movie is Sandra Bernhard, who is an obsessed, crazy Jerry Langford fan. She calls Jerry's condo, sends him letters, totally in love with him, and she's friends with Robert De Niro. I've always read that the Robert De Niro character was fanatical and crazy, but really, I don't think that character was. I think the Sandra Bernhard character was the crazy fanatical one. And long story short, they ended up kidnapping Jerry Lewis. just long enough so that he can get a spot on Jerry Langford's show. So that's the basic scenario there. And
Yeah, and for the film, it's well noted that Lewis always felt like the film didn't have an ending. He said it was good, but he really wanted his character to die at the end, and I think he was vetoed several times by the producer and by Scorsese. But he really wanted Rupert Pumpkin to kill him in the actual.
he wanted Rupert Pupkin to kill Jerry?
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't have been right, because that wasn't Rupert Pupkin's character. His character is not a murderer. I could see Sandra Bernhard killing him, but not Rupert Pupkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was him, but he wanted his character to be killed off, and he was vetoed. So I think I went back and I read it on him, and there's an article or something that he stated where he's like, I thought the film was great, but I feel like it just didn't have an ending. Like I feel like I should have been killed off.
Well, the irony is that Jerry Lewis manages to get away from Sandra Bernhard. Probably in that scene where they have him taped up is just a classic moment in film. It is so done. Sandra Bernhard should have been nominated for an Oscar for that. But he manages to convince her to take the tape off and untie him, and he gives her a good. Once he realizes that the gun is not even a real gun, after all this tension and frustration, he gives her a good swat across the face, and he gets out of her penthouse. And so, as Jerry Lewis is escaping, he sees Rupert Pupkin on television doing a stand-up on his show, and the look on Jerry's face was, I think, priceless. That character. Like, that son of a bitch got on my show, And it actually ended with Rupert Pupkin becoming a success after all. He did 3 years in prison, and then he writes a book about it, and then next he's a household name. But what I wish the film had done was an update on Jerry Lewis's character.
Yeah, in fact, I've watched it the other night, and when I first saw the ending, I just thought I don't know, I felt like it was good, but I feel like it missed something. And so, I mean, with that, even another scene, I just feel like it needed something extra at the end. I've always felt that, even on a repeated viewing of it.
How do you end that? I think, having seen the film several times now, I think there's just no other way. I think the film could have ended. I would have entertained the idea of a sequel.
I wonder if there was an idea for a sequel, but I doubt it. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, I'm still not clear. What kind of box office did that film do? I know critically it was a success, and the industry loved it. Was it a moderate success? I knew it wasn't like a blockbuster, but was it not the first movie to come out right after Hardly Working in America? Because Hardly Working was in 1981, and then King of Comedy was in 82, right?
So it said that the film was well received by critics, but it bombed at the box office. And I believe Roger Ebert originally did not like this film, and then I think somewhere in an interview, when asked if there was a film that he misjudged, I believe he said, "Yeah, The King of Comedy. I had to watch it a couple times because I think my expectations were too high to begin with it." And then with the repeated viewings, I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've seen that footage. I remember seeing that at the time, and he was asked, has there ever been a film where you could go back and change your opinion? And the first one he said was King of Comedy. He said looking back, he realized that there's definitely a quality to that film.
Box office did 2.5 million, and then their budget was 19 million. So yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, you can't blame it on wardrobe, because Jerry wore his own clothes for that film. He insisted on wearing his own clothes. Jerry was immaculately dressed in that film. All that was his own clothing.
Yeah, and when I looked further into the film, I realized that the film actually went back a number of years. So the I think it was Phil Zimmerman that wrote it. He wrote it in the 60s, and he considered Dick Cavett as the talk show host. And then actually Scorsese, I think, got it, he said, around 1974, so like almost a whole decade before he made it. And then he was like, well, I didn't want to make it. I didn't really understand the material. And then I came back to it, and then I read a comment where he said that he wished he had never made the film. And I was like, well, why did you say that? I was going to try to dig into that a little bit deeper.
Well, I guess he changed his mind because on the 30th anniversary of that film, or was it the 40th anniversary of? No, in 2013. It was what, the 30th anniversary of that film?
Yeah.
They made a big hoopla out of it. I mean, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese, did lectures, and they're very proud of the film now. And it was great to see the three of them together, all talking about, the King of Comedy, because that movie was one of the few Jerry Lewis movies that came out in my lifetime that was, to me, a big deal. But I imagine over time, it's probably made its money back and then some, because it's a film that everybody knows. It's been referenced in other pop culture entities. But let's talk about some smart decisions that were made. When it came out on DVD, a bonus edition, they included the entire monologue that Jerry Lewis did in that opening sequence where he's introduced and, the credits of the Jerry Langford Show. He comes out and he says like one joke and then it cuts, no more monologue. And I always wondered, was there more? So the DVD featured that, and I am so glad they did that, because that monologue was, it wouldn't have been appropriate because it was really just Jerry doing his shtick. It wasn't, monologues for a talk show are, they're very topical, and so what Jerry did was not very topical. It was just him doing his nightclub act, and that just wouldn't have worked. That wouldn't have conveyed talk show hosts. Have y'all seen it?
Yes, and yeah, they did make the right decision. I mean, it's funny material, but...
Oh, it's funny, but it's not talk show funny. It's...
Yeah.
Live concert Vegas funny.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same stuff that Jerry would do on his own talk show.
Which I also thought was a mistake. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny. I think that had a lot to do with Jerry Lewis getting that 84 talk show where he looked absolutely fabulous. He was in the best shape of his life then. This was after the heart attack. I know it's off subject, but I've always said that show, which was syndicated anyway, if that show had been a daytime show, it would have run easily 6 or 7 years. Easy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good show. The only thing that makes me cringe when I watch those 9 or 10 episodes or however many he did, when he did the peanut brittle joke, I went, ugh, Jerry, really? It was the first, the peanut brittle can thing, and the snake pops out. I was like, really, Jerry? But other than that, it was a good talk show. And also, I feel like Charlie Callis has his second banana. I wasn't too crazy about that either. Charlie Callis and Jerry were good friends, but I just don't need an announcer who was like, and now welcome to the, and now, Jerry, that just didn't work for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Just like it's not funny now. See? Okay. But back to the King of Comedy. When did that film come into y'all's lives? I'm just very curious. How much of Jerry Lewis did you all know before you saw it?
Well, for me, I had just been watching all of his films. That's when I first became a fan. And it always...
And Sandra, by the way, the Sandra Bernhard character in The King of Comedy was based on Cat, I think, probably.
No. Well, I will say that, just the Rupert Pumpkin stuff, and then his interaction with Rupert and as Masha. Yeah, Masha. Their interaction with each other is like the way they're discussing aspects of, waiting for him. I wasn't around in the time where you would wait for Jerry anyway, but I just simply went to his shows. But, people like that are fans that would wait from in the past, and that they were discussing his CD, which was The Best of Jerry, or the other albums that he had released.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I discuss things like that, like with memorabilia and just things that I've bought that belong to Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, but you wouldn't call Jerry's condo and say, "Did you get my letters? Why won't you talk to me?" I don't think you're that crazy, Kat. So you're good. You're good.
Yeah, but it still makes you uncomfortable. It's like, have I gone that far? But it just was uncomfortable the whole entire movie. And now it's not as uncomfortable the more you watch it, but when I first watched it, I was like, what is happening in this movie? And Rupert's character was so uncomfortable to watch just because he's so awkward and he takes it so far and he's so persistent in coming to and forcing his way through the office in that one scene, and just he wouldn't leave, and it's just so uncomfortable to watch him push himself on people.
Well, and then when the Rupert Pupkin character finally makes his way to Jerry's mansion, as if he'd been invited, that might be the one part that indicated that the Rupert Pupkin character was definitely off his rocker. To me, that was the only bizarre, crazy, psychotic thing that Robert De Niro's character did, was when he just showed up at Jerry's home, not his New York condo, but outside wherever rich people live. And that scene when Jerry and Rupert finally have their little verbal screaming match, my understanding was that Robert De Niro and his method acting technique, he wanted Jerry to convey anger. So before they started shooting, he was telling anti-Semitic jokes on the set because he wanted Jerry to really, truly be pissed at him when they did that scene. And I thought it was fantastic. I wonder if that was all scripted or did they ad-lib that? I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jerry said it was all ad-lib, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's definitely ad-libbed.
Wow.
And then even, I think one of Jerry's speeches when they have kidnapped him and he's trying to convince them not to, kill him or, go through with this thing, that was ad-libbed as well.
Well, that explains the incompetence part then, because that's one of Jerry's mantras. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it all just seems very real. Even Jerry's performance is very natural, and I think because it's so close to him, and that that he experienced stalkers personally in his life and around that time.
Yeah.
That it's just very awkward to watch him go through that.
Mm-hmm. But it lightens it up when they have him read the cue cards to let Fred DeCordova know that he had been kidnapped. See, those are the funny moments. The funniest moments to me were when he was reading the cue cards, and of course one was turned around, one was upside down, one was blank, and also when the Marcia and Rupert characters are fussing with each other. To me, those are the funniest movie moments in the whole film. Jerry is great because he's just Jerry, and I honestly do not think there was a better person to play that role, especially if you're going to call the film the King of Comedy. Who the hell else but Jerry Lewis could play that with that kind of credibility? Johnny Carson was the king of late night, but he was not the king of comedy. I would, if Bob Hope didn't have the je ne sais quoi that Jerry Lewis had to play that role. If they had gotten Frank Sinatra to play it, it would not have, as great as an actor as Frank Sinatra was, it had to be, the only person who could play the king of comedy would be the king of comedy, Jerry Lewis. He looked the role, he was the role, he embodied it. I'll argue that with anybody.
Yeah, for sure. There was another scene. So when Sandra Bernhard is singing "Come Rain or Come Shine," which is kind of the theme of the film, it also appears earlier with Ray Charles's song during the opening sequence, which is very powerful as well.
Yeah.
And she's singing this to him. Of course, Jerry Lewis sang this song himself on his hit record.
Yeah, on his first album.
It was one of his favorite songs. And so for her to sing this to him, it was like, whoa.
Oh, I'm sure there were numerous tributes to Jerry. And also, Robert De Niro was very subtle and smart on how he worked in the little subtle tributes to Jerry. For instance, there's always a scene in a Jerry Lewis movie, even the wackiest comedies, where he's seen running and you see this crazy kid running with white socks. Well, okay, well, how do you work that into the King of Comedy? So you notice when he gets out, when he escapes from being kidnapped, he still has the white tape around his leg, and he's running, and it's conveying that crazy Jerry running with the white socks. But yet, it was so beautifully done. Do you guys ever pick up on that?
I haven't, actually.
Yeah.
Huh.
So just, there was a time in my life where I was like, even, I'm a hardcore Elvis fan, but Jerry Lewis is the tippy top of the list of all my idols. Jerry Lewis was the one where if I knew that a Jerry Lewis movie was going to be on television, I would fake sick so I could stay home and record it. And I didn't have a VCR then. I just had an audio cassette recorder. So I would make audio cassette recordings of his movies. And I finally confessed that to my mother, like, way later. I said, Mom, all those times I was faking sick, I wasn't really sick. It was so I could record Jerry Lewis. So, I mean, I used to comb my hair like him. I would relax it and comb it just like Jerry. I mean, I was almost Rupert Pupkin in a way, but not to that degree. I had a sense of reality, and I knew who I was as a person, and plus for me to watch the Rupert Pupkin character, I remember reading how that character, even Jerry Lewis said that the Rupert Pupkin character was supposed to be fanatical, but I just never really got that. But the only scene in the King of Comedy that would convey that Rupert Pupkin was super fanatical like crazy was when he did show up at Jerry's home, because that's something that only an insane idiot would do.
The ending, it's kind of unclear whether he's imagining this. If Rupert Pumpkin is imagining his success, and because at the end you just hear echoes of applause, and it's very similar.
You wonder if even though you hear the announcer, or no, because remember there were all the news reports of him getting out of prison and all that,
Well, that's real. Oh yeah, but I mean, I think it's part of his imagination because the announcer at the end seems very fake, and also the applause and the laughter, and it's very similar to how he would imagine all these other situations, and the cardboard cutouts of Jerry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. Let me withdraw. You're right. Those are the scenes where, Rupert was a little crazy. So what do you think that was all about? Was that really his home and he had cardboard cutouts of Jerry Lewis's talk show set, pretending he was a guest on Jerry's show? Or was he just imagining it, or did the character really have that in his house?
I think he really had that in his house. He was one of the first people to have that. Now it's on eBay. You can buy cardboard cutouts of people. That's hilarious.
I think that'd be cool. Just for funsies, and record it and pretend you're on the show. So what about the conversation? So apparently the scene when when Rupert Pupkin is in Jerry Langford's office, and they have the conversation of him inviting him to his home. So apparently that was all hallucinated, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I guess I need to walk back what I say, that there are no scenes in the movie that show that Rupert Pupkin is crazy. So it looks like both Rupert Pupkin and the Marcia character are crazy, but they're just subtle differences,
One of my favorite sequences is where Jerry's just running away from Masha, and
yeah. That was well done, and I'm so glad they shot that movie in New York, because back in the 80s, before New York became, the corporate, cesspool of greed and malfeasance that it is today, you really saw genuine, ordinary people on the streets of New York. And, there were a couple, I know there was at least one interesting celebrity cameo. Sandra Bernhard is yelling at somebody. Who is she yelling in the streets? And then you see like these Italian looking guys saying, "Hey," one of them was Joe Strummer from the band The Clash.
Oh yeah, I noticed that on the Wikipedia page that there was a bunch of, actually there's several members of the Clash, I think.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, all right. I need to look again. It might have been. So, that was cool. And who knows? That was probably done when they were taping the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, which was, I think, was taped in New York. So, and they were on his show in 1981, which is the year that movie was filmed. So you never know. We never know. So.
Also, I found it very, almost bizarre that Bob Fosse almost considered directing this movie. At some point, it must have been a long time before Martin Scorsese was connected to it. But he had once...
Now, remind everybody who Bob Fosse is.
Bob Fosse was a film and stage choreographer, also a film director. So Bob Fosse had also wanted Sammy Davis Jr. as Jerry Langford, which would have been, interesting. But he passed on the movie and he directed a different one instead.
Well, they filmed some scenes with Sammy, but every time he was running down the street, his medallion would hit his glass eye, and it would clink, clink, clink. It just wouldn't work. These are jokes, people. Come on. Leave me hanging here. Come on. Well, do you think, Fat Thad, that The King of Comedy is one of the top 10 Jerry Lewis best films? Even though it's not really... Well, actually, it is a Jerry Lewis film because it seemed like he was so influential in a lot of the decisions.
There's an article that came out, I think it was around the time when Jerry got his Academy Award, and it said his best movies, and The King of Comedy was right up there. I think I said it's been like probably a good decade since I've actually seen The King of Comedy, which is sad. But at the time, I thought he did very good at it, and I think... as a first-time viewing, I think I saw it when I was a teenager, and so there was some sequences that I missed. Like, I missed some of Rupert's, crazy, imaginary stuff, and then I finally pieced it together, and I was like, oh, okay, he's imagining a lot of this. But I think it's Jerry's, one of Jerry's best works, especially watching it again. I mean, he does great at it.
Who played Rupert Pupkin's mother? You never see his mother, but you hear her voice. That was funny as well.
Oh, I looked that up, and that is Martin Scorsese's mom.
Wow.
Because Martin Scorsese's mom also, I believe was it Goodfellas? She's the mom, or the voice in Goodfellas as well. So Martin Scorsese used to have his mom, be in his movies. But I looked it up, and I was like, oh, wow, that's so funny.
And Martin Scorsese himself is in the movie.
Isn't she also the lady who wishes that he gets cancer? The fan?
Oh, really?
I don't think so, because I think that was an actress that...
It says Catherine... Well, I looked on Wikipedia. It says Catherine Scorsese as Rupert's mother, and it says Kathy Scorsese as Dolores. It just has a different version of her name, but it's definitely Scorsese.
Wow.
Possibly.
So I thought I heard otherwise, that it was his mom, but
for no other reason, folks, one reason to see The King of Comedy is to see that scene when Jerry Langford, his character was very comfortable walking down the streets of New York from his condo to his office where the show was taped. And so they worked in the film something that had happened to him in real life. And a lady is on the phone and she's like, oh, my God, you were not going to believe Morris, who's just walking down the street. It's Jerry Langford. Oh, my God. And she gets him to sign something. And she says, oh, my God, will you please talk to my nephew Morris? He's a big fan. And Jerry says, I'm sorry, I'm late. She says, you should get cancer. I hope you get cancer. Just like that.
Academy Award. That was just a great impression you did, by the way.
Thank you. You should get cancer. I hope you get cancer.
I read the cancer scene. That was a real thing that happened to Jerry.
Yeah, that happened in real life. Yep, that actually happened. Well, she was right. He got it about 2 or 3 times.
Also, that opening sequence with the music and the titles, and then just that imagery of Masha with her hands against the glass is very, very powerful.
Oh, that was well done. Well done. Yeah. And then it resumes as soon as the credits are over. Right. That was well done.
One last thing that I did like was the scene where Rupert is on the phone, and he keeps he keeps waiting, or he keeps shooing people away trying to get on the phone.
Oh, the payphone. The payphone. Yeah, he calls Jerry's office, pretending that he's calling from his own office, and he gives them the return phone call number, and it's the payphone number, right?
Yeah. He's like, no, I'm gonna get a phone call here. And
Yeah, and you hear all this traffic and sirens and ambulances going by. He says, "Yeah, I'm in a meeting myself. If you could just have him call J449," and he's reading the number, from the payphone, and he falls asleep, waiting for this phone call for them to call his office. I think an interesting casting choice was Shelley Hack to play Jerry's assistant. She would be the one to come down. She took Rupert Pupkin's tape and listened to it and all that. And Shelley Hack, she was one of the last actresses to play in the TV show Charlie's Angels. This is when Charlie's Angels was like on its last legs, and Shelley Hack wasn't, she wasn't Farrah Fawcett, but she was very, very good in the King of Comedy, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she played it very well, and then also in her concern for what, she had a cool demeanor about her, but also concerned, this man is crazy.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the actual monologue, Rupert Pupkin's monologue?
I thought it was funny.
I think it was good. It was funny enough. Do we know who wrote it?
I don't think so. That would be something to look into.
I've always wondered who wrote that monologue.
But I definitely think that, but then again, was it him or was it his imagination? I think that's something that you have to think about through an entire film.
Oh, so you still think that, so you're wondering if, okay, in the movie, the kidnapping definitely happened. You agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, because Rupert Pupkin wisely worked out a way to get to Jerry's studio by having somehow he had the guest list altered so that writer, the Siberian Tiger, his name wasn't on the list. So while he's saying, "Hey, I'm going to be on the show, I'm going to be on third," so while he's squabbling with security, Rupert Pupkin sneaks into the studio. So I believe that happened.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying, how good he was. I don't think that he, the whole thing happened, but whether or not he actually said those things and actually was funny, I think is left to interpretation, because you never really hear any feedback from Rita, who is played by Diane Abbott, who he loves. She doesn't really like him, and also from everybody else, you don't really hear.
No, but remember, but he goes into the bar where she works and puts the TV on. He says, "Look, I'm going to be on Jerry Langford here in a minute," and so she sees, wow, he got on Jerry Langford. Now, she's probably wondering, how the hell did he work that? Because I was there when he got thrown out of Jerry Langford's house, But I think in the movie it's conveyed that it actually did happen. What are you want to be the tiebreaker, Thad?
Which scene are we talking about?
Kat thinks that the whole monologue and it going over well, she thinks that was part of Rupert Pupkin's imagination, that it didn't happen.
Well, watching it again last night, I feel like that was a real scene.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
His dialogue, or him actually being there, that's real. But do you think he was as good as it comes off?
Well, the reason I think he was good, and because the jokes are actually good jokes. It's not now if it were to me, if he were imagining all that, if I were directing the film or writing the film, I would have made the jokes terrible, and yet he's still getting all these big laughs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
if he went out and told a
there is
bunch of
a
not
scene-
jokes and was killing the place, then I was like, okay, he's imagining this. But the monologue was solid. And the fact that they had Tony Randall guest hosting and Jerry Langford's spot and introduced him, I think all that actually happened.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just been a theory that I've seen, and then it made me think that, hey, maybe it wasn't his imagination after all.
Thad, get Scorsese on the phone. Have him settle this. Can you get Scorsese on the phone, please?
I'll try to call Scorsese.
Hey, Marty.
Right now.
Just do your Jerry Lewis voice,
I don't know if any of you have seen The Joker, but a lot of the Joker film borrows from this movie. And
Really?
Oh yes. Yeah, actually, when I heard about the Joker, I heard that it was gonna borrow from The King of Comedy and was it Taxi Driver, and then everybody was all, I mean, there'd been half the crowd heard about The King of Comedy, and then half the crowd had never even heard about it before, and I think I saw Joker in theaters, and quite a bit of it did remind me of King of Comedy. Actually, just watching King of Comedy again, I noticed, and even having Robert De Niro as the talk show host.
Wow, I need to see that.
Was just, yeah. So Robert De Niro kind of plays the Jerry Langford character. He plays the talk show host that humiliates the Joaquin Phoenix character. I forgot his name on the Arthur Dent. Yes.
Fleck.
Fleck. Yes. I'm getting them confused, but yeah. So Robert De Niro plays the Jerry Langford type character, and then he spoiler alert, he dies in the movie.
Wow.
I think.
Yeah, he Arthur Fleck shoots Robert De Niro's character in the head on live television.
And you know what? How much you want to bet that Robert De Niro suggested that because he knew that's what Jerry wanted for the King of Comedy?
Yeah.
I've wondered that, yeah.
And the sequence where you see all the televisions is also in The Joker. Like, right after that. It's kind of an homage to the King of Comedy. And I've also thought that a little bit of Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker character, had a little bit of inspiration from Jerry Lewis's characters throughout the year. He even dresses as a bellboy at one point.
Wow.
And is watching a Charlie Chaplin film. It's a lot of homage.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was a lot of similarities with the Joker and the King of Comedy, and people who are big film bucks were like, it's a straight up ripoff of two of Scorsese's films, and a lot of people hadn't even heard of the King of Comedy. I mean, they'd heard of Taxi Driver, but they were like, King of Comedy, never heard of it.
It sounds more like it's a tribute to those films rather than a ripoff. Sounds like, especially since they got De Niro to be in it.
Tribute, yeah.
And the way Arthur Fleck dresses in The Joker is a lot like Jerry Lewis's characters in other films, and like Buddy Love in The Nutty Professor.
Oh, wow.
A lot of the dancing that his character does is a lot of that too. The scene reminded me in the King of Comedy where Robert De Niro wants to be known as the King.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar thing that happens in The Joker where Joaquin Phoenix's character wants to be introduced as a character himself. So he tells Robert De Niro's character, introduce me as this. And he's like, okay.
Well, imagine if Buddy Love had been the character in Seconds. He wouldn't have sexually assaulted that lady. He would have said, here you are, baby, take this, wipe your lipstick off, slide over here next to me, and let's get started. And she would have told him off, and that would have been the end of it,
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to tie the two films together. So we are near the end of the first episode of the Total Film Critic podcast. And what do you guys think? Shall we do some more of these?
Yeah, definitely.
I'd love to if you're game.
If I'm gay? Well, what's my orientation got to do?
No, gay.
Gay people are just as capable as reviewing films as straight people, and vice versa. Game. Okay. Terribly sorry. Yeah, we'll think about it. Any closing words, guys?
I'd like to thank both of you for doing this podcast.
Yeah,
with
this
me.
is something you always wanted to do, Thad. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, and we know about, between the three of us, we know just about every film there is.
No, you two have got me beat. I am pretty sure that movies are not my thing, but the movies that I really like, I really, 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 really like, and I know what I like in a good film, and I can definitely tell you why a film is bad. And I'm actually going to suggest some films that I think are bad, and we'll talk about why I think they're bad, and I want to know if you guys have the same suggestion. And, of course, I'm also a big Elvis fan, and hopefully we can talk about some, throw in a couple of Elvis movies as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
and I tell you what, we're going to talk about 3 movies next time. We're going to talk about Thad and Kat. Y'all pick the next 2 movies, and I'm going to suggest a small segment. We're going to also review one of the short films that Thad has appeared in. What do you think about that? Yes, we are.
Man. Oh,
yep,
man.
we're going to do it. We're going to do it. I think we should, Thad, you might want to warn the directors you worked with that this will happen. We're not going to ruin any careers, but I just think we need to discuss it. And you can talk about your experience working on them. All right.
I'll try to dig up a good one from my archives.
Well, I think that one that you did last year was fantastic. I mean, flawed, yes, but it was well shot. So, and I think Kat should see it. Have you seen it, Kat? It's the period film.
I don't think I saw that one.
It was called The Messenger, but I guess we could do a little 5-minute.
Yeah, we're not gonna
and that'd be okay.
we just want to talk about it. I'll say what's the positives and the negatives, because there are definitely positives to the film.
You remind me, and I'll dig it up and look.
Well,
for it.
it's on YouTube, but it's not under the name The Messenger. It's under a weird, I don't know. It's almost like the person who uploaded it didn't want it to be seen, because it's not called The Messenger. It's something else. It's a weird foul name. So we'll have to get it to Kat. Kat, I think you'll be impressed. And Thad is a good actor.
Well, yeah, I've seen him do other. He sent me some other project he was in, and he did well in that.
Which one was that?
I don't know. I forgot. It was like it's been like 2 years or something.
For those that are listening and don't know, each of us has our own little passion thing. So Kat does her choreography, Audi does his radio station, and I do a lot of volunteer acting. I've also done directing and different things. So every time when I can get onto a project, I take it, if I have the time.
And one of Thad and myself's goals is to collaborate on a film and co-direct a film. We've actually been kicking around some story ideas, and it's just a matter about just how to logistically do it, because we live in different parts of the country, but we can travel can take care of that. So anyway, I am very happy with this. I'm looking forward to getting this on the internet.
Yeah, me too.
And alrighty, Thad,
All right.
This is your show, so I'll let you close it.
All right. Well, thank you both to my co-hosts, Audi and Kat, and we will be doing this again very soon with, I think, it looks like 3 movies next time. This has been the Total Film Critic, and I hope you continue to listen in the future.